a couple examples just to kind of illustrate just how there's not one reason. So, first, we got the perfect child example, Eliza. Eliza grew up in a loving home. Her parents were also micromanagers who liked everything to be done just right. Whenever her older brother messed up, she would witness him being yelled at. Oh, quick, see if you can find the original wound, the expressive wound, and then the self-harm, okay? So the original, expressive, self-harm. So, whenever her older brother messed up, she would witness him being yelled at, mostly by their father, who was especially strict about good manners. This applied to grades, appearance, manners. It was very important to her mother that Eliza act like a lady. There was a lot of stress at her dad's job, and her family tried to put up a strong front to prove that they were doing all right, and he didn't have to worry about them, and instead focus on work and keeping the electricity on. Eliza's older brother started acting out, stealing pocket money, missing curfew, talking back and swearing. Eliza didn't want to add to her family's stress, nor did she want to be yelled at, something that was becoming a nightly occurrence with her brother. Eliza resolved to be the perfect daughter and cause no trouble at all. As the pressure to succeed in school continued to build, and the yelling over the dinner table got louder and a nightly occurrence, the fear that she would fail and cause her parents to be disappointed in her became unbearable. To let off pressure, Eliza imagined that her skin was a balloon, ready to pop. Rather than explode, she would let it out just a little at a time, each time she punctured her skin or pulled her hair out. That's an example of the perfect child. Reclaiming the body, Joanna. Joanna had a fairly normal life until she was 16. She was raped by a boyfriend who threatened to kill her family if she ever said anything. Her family thought her boyfriend hung the moon, and had even saved her by alerting her parents of an eating disorder a year before. This won their undying faith in him. Because her parents were wooed by her manipulative boyfriend/captor and was being repeatedly sexually abused, Joanna's life was a living hell. She was held captive at all times. She was either at school, where she struggled to focus on the work, or she was at home, constantly watched by her caring but missing the mark parents, or allowed to visit her boyfriend, who was trusted to pick her up. The only freedom she felt she had was after everyone went to bed. Even Joanna's inner body wasn't hers, but she felt that when she bled, at least the surface of her skin could be reclaimed. And these are all real stories of people I've met. Rebecca, this is emotional suppression. Rebecca's family has moved around a lot because of their father's job. Rebecca struggled to maintain close friendships because every few years the family would uproot and start again. As soon as she felt comfortable sharing with her friends about the stresses of home or school, or boys, or her building anxiety, her parents would sit her and her siblings down and announce they were moving again. Eventually, Rebecca wondered why she even bothered making friends. She didn't want to go through the constant heartbreak of becoming close only to say goodbye. In fact, feeling any emotion has become overwhelming for her, especially anger. When the family announced they might be moving yet again, Rebecca wanted to scream that it wasn't fair. She had finally been accepted by her class. Instead of yelling like she wanted to, she went to the bathroom and made her first cut. The pain distracted her from her anger and seemed to help her calm down. She noticed that following the cut, she hardly felt any of the usual bad emotions she would feel following a moving announcement. Now, whenever her parents talk about the move, or her emotions get to be too much, she could nod mutely and later hurt her limbs and burn the emotions she had been denying herself all day. So that's emotional suppression. Can't take it, I can't take it, I won't. Self-punishment atonement. Tobias. Tobias's parents divorced when he was 5. When Tobias was 12 and just hitting puberty, good times, his mom married Richard. Richard was a nice guy, but once he learned Tobias had no talents whatsoever athletically, he wouldn't have much to do with the boy. Tobias knows Richard was abused as a kid, and though he's never laid a hand on Thomas, he's not really there for him either. Tobias had to figure out what it meant to be a real man by himself, and he can never seem to get it right. Richard doesn't get angry so much as disappointed in him. When Tobias was a freshman, a senior beat him up in the schoolyard. When Richard picked Tobias up from school early, he asked who had won the fight. Learning that Tobias had broken away and found a teacher, Richard said something along the lines of, "Next time, don't waste your time calling for help. Man up and finish the fight. Be a real man." Tobias can't be a real man. He feels weak, and the pain of 2 black eyes is nothing compared to the shame that his stepfather wouldn't look at him the entire drive home. More than anything, he wishes he could talk to someone about how it felt to be humiliated in front of everyone at school, how he feels utterly abandoned by his biological father and overwhelmed by his strong, never doubting, and never guiding stepfather. He can never measure up to what it means to be a man. He is weak, unclean, unworthy. What girl is going to date the school dweeb? And to punish himself, he exercises until he can't stand, he hits himself, and burns his legs. Neurological programming and suicide prevention. Ainsley grew up in a loving family. When she was 4 years old, she was sexually molested by a church elder. Because her parents hadn't been present and she herself was so young, she didn't understand what had happened, nor could she articulate how she felt about it. Ainsley convinced herself it was a nightmare and eventually learned to repress memory. Her body, however, knew something was wrong, and her neuron transmitters, as a result, were programmed from a very young age to stifle and repress the worst of her feelings into numbness. Her emotions experienced a sickening cycle. Stifle, build, explode into hysteria, experience great shame, stifle that emotion, rinse and repeat. Being addicts themselves, her parents didn't have many expressive skills to pass on to Ainsley, and without knowing their child had been sexually abused, they supposed her meltdowns over seemingly simple things was just her being too sensitive. As she got older, Ainsley continued to stifle and repress every negative feeling she couldn't bear. Every negative feeling she could, until eventually she felt so depressed and dead inside she wanted to end her life. She couldn't bear to repeat the old cycle that would result in more shame, and she didn't want to hurt her family by killing herself. In a last-ditch effort to express her misery, she cut her arms and felt alive again. Now, instead of stifle, build, explode, she stifles, builds, and cuts. She thinks this is better because no one is forced to deal with her crying all the time. Now, those of you who were here on Thursday, you saw this chart. This is our typical graph of comparison. We tend to put things on a hierarchy. This is worse than this. This suffering is greater than this suffering. And we would be tempted to say, okay, their situations are all so different, actually. Like, you got all these various different things. So it should be this, or rearranged, or whatever. I would encourage us not to do that with this or any other kind of pain. Instead, this is the graph I came up with, which is just a new way of looking at it where we all need a lot of love. We all need a lot of help. And, you know, Ainsley can't deal with this any better than Rebecca can, and Tobias, or Eliza, or Rebecca. They're all really struggling. No one deserves help more than the other, or less than. They all need a lot of love. The thing they all had in common, even though they did it for different reasons, is none of them are equipped to handle what's been going on, or how to express themselves to get the help they need. They're all trapped by different causes, but they're all stuck at the moment. Now, is that a bubble whacking or a question?
No.
Bubble whacking. Okay, do we have any questions at this point?
I have a question.
Yeah.
There were multiple different like each story had like a title above it, like the perfect child reclaiming the body.
Yeah.
Can there be like more than one of those factors that goes into self-harm?
Oh, so like can somebody be like a perfect child and neurological programming and suicide prevention?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. These are extremes. These people, who, again, are real. These are real stories. They exhibited multiple factors. This is just to more illustrate, okay, we've got this reason and this reason and this reason and this reason, but to do the entire case study would have just taken the entire time. I wasn't going to do that to any of us. But good question. Yes, it's rarely just one thing. The thing that is always present is an inability to cope with what's going on, and the inarticulation. Again, like I said before, to self-harm, it's the presence of pain. You're emotionally coping or expressing, and then you feel relief. And the factors that need to be present beforehand is you just don't know what to do. As I can guarantee you, no one starts life hoping to do this to themselves. The other thing that the self-harmers all have in common is if they knew another way, they would do that instead. Now, they didn't know another way yet, but there's always room to grow and learn new things. I've been clean for almost 10 years. I learned a better way. Now, there is a certain cycle. First, you start with negative emotions, anger, sadness, despair, whatever. You don't know how to express it. Tension. It just gets worse and worse and worse. You feel like you're going to burst. And one of the things that the most self-harmers have all said, like the worst thing ever would have been to burden anybody with their problems. That was the main word, burden. Burden, bother, waste of space, that kind of thing. Like, generally speaking, the self-harmer is a very kind and loving person, but they don't know how to accept that love. Again, part of it is, as you can see from many of those examples, there was a lot of abuse or abandonment. In Tobias's example, I think his stepfather Richard meant well. One of the little details that was thrown in there is Richard had been abused as a kid. He would have needed to, to protect himself from whoever was hurting him, would have told himself, I need to be a man, I need to defend myself. And now his stepson is being in a similar situation. What does Richard know? Well, he needs to defend himself. Be a man. I think Richard really was trying to help. Wasn't. But so, in all those situations, there wasn't intentional abuse. Sometimes he just missed the mark. For Ainsley, she didn't even remember for years and years and years, and she had very, very caring parents. But again, the point is, build up, can't express, don't know how, you feel like no one's listening. You explode, you don't want to burden, you cause yourself pain. You feel relief. When the body is hurt, like when you fall and skin your knee, after that ow, 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 you start to feel a bit of a buzzing. It's like, oh, whew. The brain says, oh no! Send help, send the endorphins, make happy, make healing. And it sends the area, and this is one of the reasons that we don't go into shock most of the time when we get injured. Most animals, they break their leg, they go into shock, and they die. When we break our leg, we're like, oh, this hurts. But we're able to get through it, generally speaking. One of the reasons is because the body releases endorphins to help us survive. And the same thing happens with any kind of injury. After that, and the self-harmer feels, I've expressed it, it's out, I'm better. Well, about an hour later, I cannot begin to describe the shame that just latches on like a bacteria. Suddenly, it dies down, and you're like, I'm still in the exact same situation as before, but now I've got this. But you still remember those 5 minutes or so of relief. And you're so used to feeling so miserable, it's like those 5 minutes seem like perfect, like totally worth it. And then you do it again. And I say, second time, it's an addiction. There are some people who do it once and don't know. But the person who's like, oh boy, that's when it becomes a real problem. Now, one of the things we said about Ainsley is she does it in part as a suicidal prevention, which begs the question, is self-harm suicidal? Who here has seen 13 Reasons Why? I am so sorry.
I didn't finish it. I only watched it, and then I turned it off.
Good.
I've never seen it, but I know about it.
Yeah, many people know about it. I think it is one of the worst things that have ever happened to the self-harmers in the world. It's just the worst. I saw the scenes in question, and I've been clean for about 8 years. And I'm sitting in the car in a parking lot. I'm like, all right, let's just watch it. I've got food in the car. I just did groceries. I can eat some grapes and feel great in a second. And I watched this thoroughly controversial scene where the girl, spoiler, she killed herself by a cutting. And I'm watching it, and I'm in the car screaming in pain because the trigger, I'm like, what were they thinking showing us that? It's the worst thing ever. If you've never seen 13 Reasons Why, do yourself a huge favor. Don't. It is so toxic and unhealthy. But so it kind of also reinforced the idea, is self-harm suicide? And it didn't help that then there was a copycat. A real girl actually killed herself in the same manner. So, bless, Anna. Why did you do that? So the question, is self-harm suicidal? It's common, but not required. Remember, To be self-harm, it needs to be intentional pain, emotional coping and expression, and emotional relief. Then there's the repetition. The one thing that is different from suicide is the coping. You're trying to get through whatever you're going through. Suicide, by partial definition, is saying, I'm not going to work anymore. I'm not going to try any longer. I'm done. The self-harmer, it's more like you're in a jungle and you're being chased by wolves and you don't have a gun anymore to defend yourself, but you found a stick. And I will use this stick. If I had anything else, I would use anything else, but all I got is the stick. So self-harm in and of itself is generally not suicidal. And if you ask a friend who's self-harming and they say no, usually they might be lying. But also, generally speaking, they're able to say definitively if it's not self-harm because they are also suicidal. So you got both. You got the self-harm, you got suicidal. You definitely got that. You probably do have this or have struggled. They're not the same thing, but it's like if you're making a cake, it probably has gluten. Unless you don't. Yeah. Hopefully that explained it really well. So here's a bit of a question of them all. So Johanna, who's trying to reclaim her body, Ainsley, who the suicidal prevention, Eliza, the perfect child, Rebecca, the suppressor, Tobias, the atonement. Of them, who do you suppose is most likely to kill themselves eventually successfully?
I mean, I'm assuming this is a trick question, but I'd say Ainsley.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. She's just had it so bad for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she really doesn't know any other way.
Very good thought. Any other thoughts? Yes.
I'd say Joanna because she feels trapped that she can't go anywhere. She can't go to her family, and whenever she's not with her family, she's with her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good thought. Yeah.
I was also going to say Joanna because victims of sexual assault are usually suicide is like result.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Let me, is that me or?
You had a hand?
Oh yes, so I was thinking possibly Rebecca because she could just suppress her emotions for so long that eventually she just can't do it anymore.
Yeah, these are all great thoughts. Any others? So there's a bit of a trick question, but also it wasn't. Tobias. The primary reason is he's a guy. All 5 of them will probably struggle with suicidal thoughts, and any one of them could, but statistically speaking, the men are ignored emotionally. The situation that happened with Tobias and his father, that's a very, very common story. They're the least likely to reach out for help because they're always told, you know, man up, be a man, big boys don't cry, whatever else you've been told. Again, I'm so sorry. If you get help, which is rare, you're less likely to stick it out. So traditionally, like there's a reason we hear more about male shooters than women. It's like we're plenty violent, thank you very much, but we tend to get help before we turn it out to other people. And men in general just have higher successful suicide rates. So any of them could be, but unfortunately, because Tobias is unlikely to reach out for help ever, he's the greatest risk in the long run. But all of your reasoning is really, really good. It's on point. But it also kind of illustrates the whole, like, the scale I had earlier where it's like, all right, we don't need to put them on a graph, per se. Like, you're struggling, you're struggling, you're struggling, you're struggling. You all need a lot of love. You all need to learn how to express. You all need to know that people care about you. But in the long run, for you dudes out here, and for any of you who know a dude, which I think might be all of you, you know, encourage your guy friends. You know, encourage your bros. You know, whatever language, I don't know. But encourage each other to seek out help. And guys, you know, talk to each other about what's going on, because this is all too common. Yeah. So, for the self-harmer, you have precisely 3 options and no more. You can relapse, rebound, or recover.